Hey, Chandler Bolt here, CEO of Self-Publishing School and selfpublishing.com. And I've got an amazing interview in store for you here in just 1 minute. I'm with Hal Elrod. It is awesome. So it's all about going beyond the bestseller. We talk about foreign book rights. So what do you do if you're looking to sell your rights globally, internationally, things like that. We also talk about turning a book into a series. So obviously his book, The Miracle Morning, has sold millions of copies, and now he's been able to turn it into a series, kind of like Chicken Soup for the Soul style. So The Miracle Morning 4, and then all these different groups of people. And then also about selling out your first ever live event. So he talks about that. And also, just kind of as a fun aside, Hal Elrod spoke at our first ever live event here at Self-Publishing School called Author Advantage Live. And he just brought down the house. It was amazing. But he talks about selling out his first live event in that video. Now, hey, quick announcement. So depending on when you're seeing this, we are either about to launch the Self-Publishing School podcast, or it's already launched. So this is an interview from the archives. So a kind of an older interview that we're bringing back. And so if you haven't seen it before, you're going to love it. It's amazing. But the podcast is officially launching April 22nd. Okay, so there will be a link right below this in the description. Click that link. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. We've got a ton of awesome interviews. We're going to be publishing all those interviews on this YouTube channel. So you'll have kind of two options. You can listen on the podcast, or you can watch on the YouTube channel here. So subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and do that now. You're going to love this interview with Hal Elrod. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Hal Elrod. Hal Elrod has become one of the most successful self-published authors in the world and is best known for his international best-selling book, The Miracle Morning, which is now selling over 10,000 copies every single month as a self-published book. And it also has an unprecedented 1,100 plus five-star reviews, not just total reviews, five-star reviews on Amazon. He's cracked the code to create an extraordinary income and impact as an author. And Hal, he's one of my good friends. So we go way back. He used to be a San Diegan. Now he's living in Austin. He's living the Austin life. I spoke at his event this past year, and gosh,
2 years in a row, man. You were at my event. You were right. 2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. Amazing event. And Hal's just, he's one of the good guys, and he's someone that is just, you can tell he genuinely cares about helping people. And his book, The Miracle Morning, has completely changed my life. I went from struggling, coming out of being a college dropout with like my bank account was just boop, 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 all the way to zero. And I remember reading The Miracle Morning, and it turned things around for me. And I did 7 figures in business that year. And so I believe in The Miracle Morning. If you haven't read the book, you need to read it. It's an easy read. It's not that long.
I write at a 3rd grade level.
So you definitely need to check it out. Anyone can understand it. No. So definitely check out the book. But I'm so pumped to have Hal on here. And so welcome, Hal.
Oh, dude, like you said, we're friends, man. I'm looking for. I always love talking to you. I've told you, Chandler, you have one of the most pleasant faces. That's why you were built for either TV or internet marketing, something like your face, man. It just makes people smile.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Now, obviously, if people want to hear the backstory, if they want to hear us go deep and really just hear the whole history of The Miracle Morning, check out the last interview that we did. You'll find that there. I want to skip that and get to the good stuff. But actually, before we really get to the good stuff, maybe just give people like a 60-second, 2-minute, like, what is The Miracle Morning and how many copies is it sold? How successful has it been? Things like that.
Yeah, so The Miracle Morning it's so simple. I never thought it would become this successful or change this many lives. I thought, wait, how am I going to write a book about a morning ritual and how that could change your life? And all these people think they're not morning people. How's that going to resonate? And it has in ways I've never imagined. And maybe we'll get into, today, how some of the ways that or reasons, how the book is written in a way that people actually implement it, and therefore it changes their life, and therefore they tell everyone they know about it. So that's kind of been the secret sauce, if you will. But so yeah, we're selling 10,000 copies a month. I think last month we sold like 16,000 copies. It's a self-published book, so from an author standpoint, the royalties are much higher than if it were traditionally published. Actually, it's a hybrid published book because we just signed with 21 foreign publishers. China last week, that was our 21st foreign publisher. But it is right now the #1 best-selling book in all of Korea. which is kind of crazy. It's like number 3 in the UK. It hit as number high as number 5 in all of France. So, it's published and translated in all these different countries. And so, yeah, my mission is to elevate the consciousness of humanity and literally change billions of lives with the Miracle Morning. And it wasn't that when I set out. I didn't have this big vision, but now that I've seen what it's done, I'm committed to getting it out and reaching, the whole human race.
Love it. Now, how many copies has the Miracle Morning sold to date? Do you have any idea?
Somewhere over 200,000. I don't know the exact number.
Love it. Okay, now so let's dive into. I want to dive into kind of why you feel like this book has been so successful, and especially on the back end. Like, what have you done to you talked about building things in so that people could share the book, but what have you done in terms of just having so much momentum off the back end of the book, and not just having a book, but turning it into a movement?
Yeah. So the biggest, I think the biggest differentiator between a book that becomes a movement and becomes this word of mouth phenomenon, as the Miracle Morning has, is writing a book that changes people's behavior. And now, whatever your topic is, by the way, you can embed behavior change into your content. And I'll give a couple examples of how to do that. But think about this. Most books, they don't change our behavior. All they do is shift our thinking. And it's like a short-term shift because our memory is short. And we've all been there, right? Where, Chandler, you're reading a book and you're like, oh my God, this is the best book I've ever read. Like, oh, wow. And you're like telling everyone for the time you're reading that book. But then after a few weeks, you're done reading it, and all those profound shifts in thinking start to fade. You pick up a new book. Oh, that's the best book you've ever read. Oh my God, you're telling everybody right? Well, how do you write a book that a year from now, your readers are still telling everybody they know 2 years from now? And the way to do it is to create permanent behavior change. Now, what does that look like? It's giving them rituals or routines or processes that is around your content. And a couple examples are really simple that anybody can do. Write an affirmation that's a downloadable PDF that reaffirms what your book teaches and have them read that every day. Or create a journaling process that your people write in every day. Great example. A movement is the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, I believe, right? Millions of people. That introduced a practice called morning pages, a behavior change, writing every day, this journaling process. There are, I don't know how many millions of people around the world that do morning pages every single day. If she wouldn't have taught that process, that practice, that ritual, who knows what kind of movement it would have become. But, a great book, right? But no. People are doing morning pages, and they've been doing it for years. Every day, it adds value to their life every day. So if you're write a book on, you're a couples, for a husband and wife, we'll create a ritual for them to do every night before bed, right? They tell each other what they love about each other, or they write it in their journal or whatever. Create ritual around your content. And what else? You asked like 17 questions in the one question.
How have you done that specifically inside the Miracle Morning?
So Miracle Morning, and that's why I'm giving examples, because when I've taught that before, anyone that knows Miracle Morning, their first response is always, but dude, your book is a ritual. Like your book, literally, that's all it teaches you, how to do a daily ritual. So it changes their behavior. And that's why I say, okay, well, I had to ask myself, that's a good point. So how can you do that? How can any author do that? Right. And you just ask, and by the way, the Miracle Morning is made up of 6 practices: silence, meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and journaling. You can take at least half those practices, and you could just take your content, like write an affirmation around your content, like I said, create journaling process around your content, create a visualization process around your content, right? You create a meditation, a guided meditation that reinforces. The other day, Chandler, my son has been having tantrums. We just moved here, and little kids don't deal well with major changes like that. So he's been just throwing these tantrums. And so my wife and I woke up to do our Miracle Morning of the day, and I went on YouTube, and I was like, I wonder if they have like a guided meditation to deal with kids that have tantrums. I don't know. And sure enough, there was a guided meditation for parents, and it was so profound. And all a guided meditation is somebody talking in a calm voice, sharing their content, right? And that's it, but he was basically just teaching us how to manage a child that has a tantrum, right? So you can teach your content in a guided meditation, have people listen to it, etc. So that's how the Miracle Morning is by definition a ritual. So it is behavior change just by doing it. But again, anybody can take a ritual or a routine and cater it to their content in their book.
Got it. So you've got the behavior change, you've got the rituals, you've got these things that continue to have people share the book with friends, which has exploded to where the sales just continue to grow, right? What are some other things that you feel like you've done in the long term to make it not just a best-selling book, but this is really a business for you, and it's a foundation. It's foundational passive income not only for your family, but it allows you to do a lot of other things. So what are some other things that you feel like, maybe from a marketing perspective, have built that back end on the book?
I didn't feel like, I've always thought, man, I did a terrible job creating a back end when my book came out. Meaning my plan was, let's create an online Miracle Morning course for like, $47, $97, whatever it is. And that way, when people opt in, and actually, I don't want to forget, Chandler, make a note, remind me, I do need to teach you how I'm able to get roughly 80% opt-in for every reader that reads my book. 80% opt-in, which the industry standard is like 8 to 12%. So I want to make sure I teach how to do that, because that's a big deal. And yeah, the Miracle Morning becomes the front of my funnel. So we have over 10,000 sales a month and over 10,000 opt-ins a month into our list. And the beauty of that is they're opting in not off a Facebook ad, which if you see a Facebook ad with a cool headline, you're like, ooh, yeah, I want to lose 20 pounds. Click, right? Then you opt in for the free report. But your level of trust and rapport and relationship with the person delivering that content is very limited. You just saw a Facebook ad with a good headline. If people are halfway through your book and then they're opting in for more value, right, those people are going to stick around a long time. And you have, if you have something you can sell them that adds more value, right, you're going to convert at a higher level. So where was I going with that? As far as the business goes, so yeah, I always thought so what happened was I set a publish date, 12/12/12. Right. I picked a date, and it was a memorable date. It's like, I didn't want to adjust it. I got really attached to it, and I announced it publicly. The book's coming out 12/12/12. Right. And my plan was to have this online course ready, and basically 12/12/12 rolled around, and I was like, shit, I don't have an online course yet. I didn't get it done. Oh, I got it. The book's coming out. So it came out, and there was no online course. That might've been a blessing in disguise. And now it's, hindsight being 2020, looking back, here's what's happened. Over the when the book came out, by the way, we had 14,000 people on the email list. Probably 8,000 of those were bad emails. It was like I built that list over like 8 years, and I never communicated with them. It was terrible. Since then, we've added 100,000 plus people to the email list from the book opt-ins. And but here's what's happened. I didn't have an online marketing funnel that they were automatically put into. All I had was a weekly podcast, which didn't sell anything, didn't even have sponsors. It just added value. So what's happened is all I've done with that list, my back end, which was not really existent when the book came out, is I've added value and I've added value and I've added value. Every week, they don't get a sales email. They don't get anything other than a new podcast episode or something. And then here's the deal. My back end, over the years, we launched our first live event, Best Year Ever Blueprint, right? We've done that 2 years in a row. You were at both of them. It's a $500 event, roughly $600 event. And here's what happened. Because I had been adding value for about a year without ever selling anything, our first event, my dream was 100 people there. Like, I had never put on an event. I was scared to death that nobody would come. 100 people there. We had 220 people in the room. Second event, I was like, all right, I want to get to 300. We ended up selling out a month in advance and ended up at like 330, and we couldn't fit it. We could not fit. People were like sitting, whatever. So here's the point, right? If you are writing a book and you want to make money off of it and turn it into a business, first and foremost, right, create behavior change in your book so that it doesn't just change someone's thinking while they read it, but it implements permanent behavior change that adds value long after your book is done being read by them. But beyond that, in terms of your backend, don't stress about having this killer, Chandler Bolt, awesome, marketing, funnel that adds value. Like the secret, like Chandler, you're so great at, I think of you all the time when I'm like flailing around trying to put dude, our webinar, we had 1,000 people registered last week and we couldn't get it to start. And I'm like, where's Chandler? He's so good at this stuff. Anyway, but the point is, add value, add value, add value, add value, come out with quality, right? Don't just create a product to monetize your list. Add value, develop a relationship with your list, a really quality relationship. And only once you've added a lot of value, then as needed, create your backend. But it doesn't have to be in place and ready when your book comes out. And that is one thing that, that I learned. And I thought I failed, but it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Such great lessons there. That's fantastic. Now, you kind of tease this with the 80% opt-in rate. And that's obviously how people go from, hey, I'm holding your book, to, hey, I'm now on your email list, buying your stuff, going to your events, doing all these things. So how do you get that 80% opt-in rate?
Yeah, and I didn't even know it was good. I don't know what's what. And I was at this conference, this publishing conference, and I shared that from the stage. And this publisher came up afterwards. She was, they're a publisher, and she's like, "What? That can't be right." And I was like, "No, I promise, I wouldn't make something up." And she goes, "We get 8 to 12%. How do you get 80%?" And I was like, "Really?" So that forced me to go, "Oh, I didn't know it was that good. Why is it happening?" Here's what I believe. I guess I think this is theory, but I think it's pretty close to the reasoning why, is that I offer, I think it's 5 different bonuses in the Miracle Morning book. I offer, like when I'm talking about affirmations, I offer some sample affirmations for different categories, but maybe more importantly, and this is kind of a bonus lesson, I offer my personal affirmations to download. And I say, if you want to read the affirmations that got me to finally write this book after 3 years of it being a goal that I failed to attempt, if you, the reader, have any goals that you have on your list that fear is holding you back from, check out the affirmations that got me over my fear so I could write this book. Right? So pretty compelling, but let's say they're like, I don't like affirmations, right? Then they keep reading, and then I could talk about journaling, and I'm like, hey, here's why journaling is so life-changing. Here's how to do it. If you want to download a PDF of a sample Miracle Morning journal, go to this link. By the way, it's the same URL for all the bonuses. And if they're like, I don't want to journal, right? The point is, all these different bonuses, there's a smoothie recipe, there's all this stuff. And then at the very end of the book, and we can get into this more, the importance of a 30-day challenge to really make sure your reader implements your new behavior change that you've taught them, and really holding their hand through that process so they succeed at it. They get the 30-day challenge fast start kit at the end. After I've spent an entire chapter selling them on the value of doing this for 30 days, there's a document to support them. So if by the 5th, if you have 5 really good bonuses in your book that add value, they're relevant, if by the 5th bonus, they haven't opted in, either your book sucks or your bonuses suck. But I mean, that's to me, like the people that aren't opting in, those 20%, they're the ones that were never going to opt in no matter what you did. But I think that's the reason why is there's like 5 different touch points for people to opt in that are different and compelling. And they all support what they're learning to make it easier for them to implement it.
Love that. And actually, just thinking back to when I read the book, it was a 30-day challenge that got me, which I know most people say, which this is a true stat. It's like, gosh, I think it's something like 20% or less of people actually finish a book that they bought. Like it's insanely low. So I think the important thing that you touched on is not to save the opt-in for the end of the book, because if so, you're going to be missing at least 80% of the people. Yeah. But those are your best opt-ins, right? Because they're your most committed people. They've read all your stuff. And for me, it was like, I'm going all the way to the end. I'm getting this 30-day challenge. I've printed off all these sheets. I'm like writing stuff out. I'm like, now I've got this stuff scattered around my house. Like I probably still have it somewhere in my house. And it's like, anytime I see that, not only did you get my email address in the process, but like that's continuing the relationship. And that's continuing the value add. And also it's triggering for me to share the book with other people. So it's great. Awesome. Well, let's keep moving. So Now, since you did the Miracle Morning, and I actually see these behind you, you've got the different covers of the different books. You've turned this into a series.
Yeah.
So, talk to us a little bit about kind of the process of turning a book into a series of books. What's that been like?
Yeah. And that, that is something that it's like anything, it's amazing to like look back and think about. My buddy Ryan, who I used to sell Cutco with, called me. He's like, dude, have you thought about doing like Miracle Morning for salespeople? Salespeople totally need this. I was like, that's a great idea. He's like, you should do like a whole book series about. I'm like, that's a great idea. Like, you want to do Miracle Morning for salespeople with me? And he's like, sure. And so, right. So that's the orange one up there. So it's, I definitely can teach a lot on this, I think, because we started serializing, franchising the book like 2 years ago. And really the question was, how do we come out with books that encapsulate the essence of the original? So if someone hasn't read the original, they get it, but not making it repetitive. So someone that's read the original, but they're also a real estate agent or whoever, reading the series book doesn't go, dude, this is just like a ripoff of the original book, right? Because I think the original idea that, my buddy was like, dude, just replace the word people with salespeople. And there you go. All right. I was like, oh, that's easy, And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, that's not going to get a lot of good reviews on Amazon. You're going to get a lot of people really upset. So the question was, I started asking, how can I make every book stand alone as a 5-star reviewed excellent book? Because I hadn't seen another series that had done it. Like the closest thing that I was going to model, because I was a fan of the original, was what's that book called about systematizing your business?
The E-Myth?
Yes, thank you. There you go. I knew you have. Yeah, so the E-Myth, right? He did the E-Myth for contractors, for this, for that, for this. Well, if you look at them, and Michael Gerber's a genius, so I hope if he's watching, Michael, like no offense, I'm just going off of what I saw on Amazon. If you look at those books, it doesn't look like they're selling a lot of copies. There's not that many reviews, and the reviews they're not bad, but they're like 3-4 star on average reviews for his books. So I bought some of those and I was like, all right, what did he do? I don't like, how can I do it better? So long story short, the process that we've come up with, and when I say we, and here's a bonus lesson, which is partnering with, if you can, partnering with somebody to take on, like our series is such a monster. My business partner, Honore Quarter, she is in charge of all of that. My job now is I meet a badass co-author, like Cameron Harold, just signed on to do the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs. And which pumped about. I love Cameron. And so
that's awesome.
So I go to these events, I meet all these highly influential people, right? And then Cameron signs on, I introduce him to Honore, and 6 months later I get a PDF that says, hey Hal, do you like the book? Are there any changes you'd like us to make? Right? It's ready to go to the editors. And it's just this almost completely passive, and it's going to be huge with 100 books eventually. I mean, we've got over 100 titles. So the formula for what we figured out in the book itself is the first 4 chapters of the book basically are written before the co-author comes in. I wrote them, and they are it's 4 chapters that sums up the entire Miracle Morning book in the original, but there's placeholders to customize it for the niche that we're going into. And the co-author, we ask that they go in and that they do some, not just replace words, but actually do some tweaking and add a sentence here. Hey, if you're a salesperson, here's why you'd want to do that, or how you might tweak it, or whatever. So they go in, they just spend, it probably takes them a couple hours to go tweak those 4 chapters, ready to go. Then their job is to add 6 chapters of killer content around what they're an expert in. So when I wrote the real estate book, we brought in 3 of the world top real estate trainers in the world, right? And they completely created all this new content. I had nothing to do with that part because I don't know anything about the real estate industry, right? Same thing with like we have the Miracle Morning for Writers is about to come out. S.J. Scott co-authored that with me, and it's such a good book. Like, but it's so good because of him. I mean, he contributed those other 6 chapters that are just game changers. And so that's the formula. And then I don't know if you have any specific questions. We could go into more detail, or we can go on to something else.
How did you discover that formula? And was that something that you just started with out of the gate? Has it evolved since then?
Trial and error. So the first book that came out is the real estate book. And I never would have this wasn't I didn't sit back and go, okay, what are the strategically, which titles should come out in which order? Real estate's an obscure title, but it's really organic how it happened. I met this guy, top real estate trainer, started like crying, telling me how Miracle Morning changed his life. And, and he said, I'd love to do a book for the real estate industry. And I was like, great idea. Right. So that was a parable. So he had written, so Michael J. Mayer is a best-selling author. His book has, hundreds of like 500, 4.9 out of 5-star reviews on Amazon. It's called The 7 Levels of Communication. That's a parable about a real estate agent and this girl. And then he came to me and said, what if we did a parable? Let's make it what if we did a parable for these people that discover the Miracle Morning and it turns their life around? And I was like, if you want to write a parable, sure. So we did that, experimented, and I figured it wasn't scalable because it's hard, writing a good parable is not easy. So I couldn't scale that where all these other authors could come in and write this killer parable. So that was iteration number 1. Worked out great. People seemed to love it. Not going to work. And then the next book is really the salesperson book, is where we kind of created that, I spent probably 30 hours at least on that book. With my co-author. Now I spend like 3, on each of the books because the process is in place. But on that one, I wrote those 4 chapters. I massaged them. I shifted all, you know what I mean? I added a lot of content to it. So no, it wasn't right out the gate. It took a lot of massaging to finally get to that place. But now that we've got this, what's proven to work, people are loving all the books. Now we just, we plug in the network marketer. We say, all right, give us an outline. What are the 6 chapters? What are the 6 best, the most important strategies you can teach for a network marketer to succeed at a high level, right? And then we plug all that in and they write it and we edit it and all that.
Got it. Now, what about the process for co-authors? How does that work from finding them to getting them to commit, to structuring the deal, to is there a part in place on that, like requirements for marketing or for like, how does that kind of whole structure work?
Yeah. So that's evolved. I'll tell you, I was with my coach back. He was my coach back then. In fact, James Malinchek. I was sitting in James Malinchek's office getting some coaching on him. And the series we were just writing the real estate book, the first one. We were writing the salesperson book, I think, or maybe even before the books had started, but it was like we were about to launch it. And I had my buddy who was going to co-author one. He said, Hal, are you charging the co-authors to write a book in the series? I said, no, man. Like at that point, I was like, I'm just like desperate, hoping somebody would write a book with the series, And I was like, and it's just self-worth issues. I'm like, who am I to charge? He goes, Hal, you should be charging a minimum of $10,000 minimum to co-author a book in the series. You've built this brand and it's growing and yada yada. And so, I'm taking notes and I write down, $10,000 for a co-author to write a book in the series. And as I'm writing it in my head, I'm like, I'll never freaking say that. I don't have the balls to tell somebody they have to pay me $10,000 to write a book. It's just so funny to look back at that. And then, dude, it was like 2 days later that I'm having a conversation with the real estate trainer, not Michael Mayer, is actually another one of the trainers that co-authored the book. There's 3 of them. And he starts telling me how the Miracle Morning changed his life. And he reads it to his son every night. Like he's rereads the book over and over. And he said, I'd love to co-author it with you guys. Is there any kind of fee? And I was like, I took a big swallow and I was like, yeah, it's $10,000. And I'm like, and he's like, done. I'm like, oh, no way. Wow. Right. And so it's like, once you get paid something, you're like, oh, I can keep charging for that. I keep charging that, And so now it's up to $20,000, in just about a year and a half, it's up to $20,000 and it may go up again. But here's the deal. So, right, you got to start somewhere. And in the beginning, I had no proof that the series was going to take off. I had nothing. Now I'm able to show so somebody like a Cameron Herold, right? Who, if you don't know who that is, if you're watching, right, Google Cameron Herold, but he, former COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He coaches some of the world's top CEOs and COOs. He's a total badass. And Cameron is in demand and he, his speaking fee, I think it's like $25K. So, it's not like you got to really make things make sense for him. So I was able to send him a graph of the book sales for the real estate book for the first year. And the real estate book for the first year brought in like $94,000 in royalties. So, and I pay my co-authors 50% and I get 25%. So they make double what I make. And the other 25% goes to my business partner, right? So the co-author gets 50%. And we might change that. I have some business advisors who are like, dude, you're paying way too much, or you need to scale it, start at 30 and go to, so whatever. But right now, the co-authors get 50%, and I get half of that. And I feel really good about that. Eben Pagan taught something a long time ago. I heard him say, learn to love getting the short end of the stick. And he said, and number one, you'll get a lot more sticks. In fact, he said, people will throw their sticks at you like, dude, take my stick, because they'll see that your business philosophy is you give more than you take. And that really resonated with my values back when I heard it. And so when I launched the series and I was trying to figure out how to do it, that's what we went with. And so far it feels good. So, to pay my co-author that your $47,000 is the half that they got. So I was able to share with, with all my future co-authors, hey, if they go $20,000, that's a lot. And I go, really? How many investments can you spend 20 grand and you're going to get, a 100% return year one. And then who knows what for the next 50 years, right? That's why $20,000 is actually really low when we look at it that way, So that's it. And then there are stipulations. So whenever somebody wants to be a co-author, to answer your question about are there requirements, we send them a document, and the requirements will probably keep going up. But right now you have to pay the $20,000 co-author fee. You have to have a platform of at least 100,000 individuals. So whether it's email list or across social media, 100,000 people on your list, right? Because they've got to bring value to the table. There's any niche. We're not attached to one person, right? If we write the Miracle Morning for attorneys one day, right? Well, there's probably thousands of killer attorneys. So we want the one who's going to bring not just their knowledge and their strategies, because there's a lot of that out there. It's who's going to bring the platform that's going to be able to get the book into the hands of people in the niche that we're going into that we don't have access to, all these attorneys or whatever. So, I think that pretty much covers it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Those are some great tips and great feedback. And I agree. I'm sure the requirements and everything is going to continue to climb and climb and climb as you
get in there and get a Miracle Morning book under your belt before it's out of your price range, Bolt.
Oh man, we got to do it. Let's do it. All right. So let's see. Next question I have is let's talk a little bit on the foreign rights side of things. How did you get your first foreign rights deal? How has that altered how you make money on the back end of the book? Is it something that you would recommend for other people? And what does that look like?
Yeah. So I recently had this conversation with my buddy, Pat Flynn, who his book, Will It Fly? If you don't have Pat Flynn's book, Will It Fly? Highly, highly recommend it. It's a fantastic book for any entrepreneur or business owner. But so Pat called me and he's like, Hal, we hit the Wall Street Journal list the first week. The book is crushing it. And I'm getting calls right and left from publishers wanting to sign me because he self-published it, right? He's like, I don't know what to do. Like, you've been down this road. What do I do? So my advice to Pat, as somebody who could get a huge advance, right? I mean, he's got a huge platform. He could get a huge advance. His book's already crushing it. My advice to him was to keep the self-published book and then sign with a traditional publisher only to sell the foreign rights. And that's what I did by accident, right? Like, it happened by accident. What happened was I was at a dinner with a bunch of entrepreneurs. Mike Koenig said, Hal, do you have a publisher or an agent to get a major publisher? He said, Miracle Morning's it's huge. I see it everywhere. You could sign with a major publisher, get distribution, get a big advance. And I was like, that's what I want. I think that's what I need to take the impact of the Miracle Morning to the next level, is that distribution, right? And so that's what I thought I wanted. Turned out to not be what I wanted, and I'll explain what that's about. But so he introduced me to his agent. I had a call with her, and she signed me, and we went after major New York publishers. Now, when I had meetings with 13 New York publishers, Random House, Simon & Schuster, all of them. And like a few days before, I called Tucker Max. And I said, if you don't know who Tucker is, he's sold millions of books, right? And he's the owner of Book in a Box now, who I'm using for my new book. If you want to write a book and you have the money, but you don't have the time to write it, go to bookinabox.com. Highly recommend it. I wish I had an affiliate code, but I don't. But so I called Tucker, and I'm like, Tucker, you've been down this road. You've published, you've sold millions of books. Like, what do I not know that I should know before I meet with these publishers? And he's like, to paraphrase what he said, he goes, dude, what are you doing? Why would you give up all of your rights and most of your royalties to get distribution into bookstores, which is a dying market, vehicle to market books? I think he's the one that told me, 72% of books are sold on Amazon.com. Why would you give up 72% of your royalties to get into 28% of the market? You know what I mean? Like, he's like, it doesn't make sense. And I went, oh man, I now don't know what to do if I get offers tomorrow. I almost was like, I want to throw these interviews and just like show up drunk and be a total moron. I don't know what to do. But I didn't want to let my agent down. So I showed up, I did my pitch, and we ended up getting 9 offers. The top few were, $250,000. They were significant advances. And we turned them all down because compared to self-publishing, it didn't make sense. And again, this happened by accident, but my agent, she said, hey, no big deal. I understand. What about the foreign rights? And I didn't even know this was an option. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, we can sell your foreign rights. So we'll sell the book to major publishers in foreign countries, and then they will distribute it. They'll put it in bookstores, airports, train stations. You'll get smaller advances usually, but you'll get a lot of them. And I was like, but wait, I get to keep my self-published book and all of my royalties and all of my rights in the United States, where 98% of my book sales are? She said, yeah. I was like, that sounds like having my cake and eating it too. She's like, that's exactly what it is. So we met with, and now we just signed with 21 foreign publishers, and the advances total, I think, about $150,000 amongst all the foreign publishers, and then back-end royalties. And then there's all sorts of like, dude, the Korean publisher reaches out and he goes, hey, we want to publish Taking Life Head On, which is my first book that I've probably made $3,000 off of in the last 10 years. And they want to give me a $10,000 advance for the Korean version. Like, that's 3 times what I've made in the United States in 10 years. Okay, yeah, whatever. And then they did the same with the Miracle Morning for salespeople. So, so let me share the most important advice I'm giving you all right now. And it might not be, but it's up there. This is like top 3 things I'll say on the whole podcast. If you're debating between self-publishing or traditional, or if you're self-published, but you're like, I don't know if that was the best decision. Like, you're going down that road, but you're like, oh, maybe I should have traditionally. Or if like someone that's, your parent is like, oh, you're self-published. Nobody respects a self-published. I don't know. If there's any conflict there, here's the deal. What I was in the very beginning of the Miracle Morning being written, I thought it could go big. And I was going to go in between. I was originally going to go with a traditional publisher, and I had a big 30-page book proposal. And I finally got clear, wait a minute. After I did my research, I have to do 90% of the marketing, even if I'm traditionally published, and I get a fraction of the royalties. There's really almost no, and I'm not going to get put in bookstores unless I go out there and sell a zillion copies. So why don't I self-publish, go sell a zillion copies, because it's on me anyway, or create leverage so that the publishers come knocking on my door going, wow, this is great. And it ended up, that was like a pipe dream at the time, but that's exactly what happened. And it can happen for you too. There is very, very few people, unless you have a huge platform, and if you can get $1 million advance, consider going with a traditional publisher. Anything less than that, I probably wouldn't do it. For 98% of authors out there, give or take, self-publishing first, working your ass off. And when I say working, like, I sold 2,000 copies the first month that Miracle Morning came out, Chandler. And because I promoted the heck out of it, all my friends and family, everyone I knew bought it. And then the curve went like this, and it took almost 2 years to get back to 2,000 copies. And I've done over 230 interviews on podcast and over 100 of my own episodes, right? Like, so the point is, this is a long-term game. I was making a few $100s the first few months Miracle Morning was out, not tens of thousands of dollars, right? That took a long time. And I encourage you, I listened to a book in the beginning that gave me faith over the long game, which is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And it's what makes ideas finally skyrocket. And right, it's this long, tedious process of sharing and promoting. And if you believe in your message, you got to commit to promote it until you reach your goals. And it might take you 6 months. It might take you 6 years. If you believe in your message, keep promoting it.
On the foreign rights side of things, you obviously you talked about the advances. In terms of a revenue perspective, like an ongoing revenue perspective, what percentage does that make up for you? Is that a significant amount, or is that more of a long game for you in terms of spreading the message of the Miracle Morning?
Yeah. So so it's like a traditional publishing deal where I'm getting, 8 to 12% on the books, right? After the advance is paid out, so just like a traditional publishing deal. Here's the deal. It's more about the message. My mission is it used to be to change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And then now I'm like, whoa, we're going to do that by like next year. So then it was change millions of lives one morning at a time. And then last week I met with 26 thought leaders. They came to what was called the Miracle Morning Design Summit around how are we going to impact, it was millions of lives. By the end of the meeting with great minds like Yannick Silver was there. I don't know if I told you this, Peter Shankman. And it was, how can we change billions of lives? How can we elevate the consciousness of humanity? How can we have the Miracle Morning in every school and end bullying, eradicate obesity? How can we solve the world's biggest problems through daily the Miracle Morning, right? And hearing these, not just pipe dreams, but they're like, here's how we would do it. I'm like, this is amazing. Where was I? Oh, so the point is, so now that I'm there, that's what I care about is the impact. And the income comes as a result, of course, right? Zig Ziglar said, no truer words have ever been spoken. You help enough people get what they want in their life, and you get everything you want. And I've seen that unfold now. So it's about reaching billions of people. And here's the deal. I've had a couple self-published authors that are successful go, dude, you sold your foreign rights? No, they're giving you 8%. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I go, hey, you tell me how to get in every bookstore in Korea, every train station in the UK, every airport in London, right? I don't know. I'm not going to go over there. And dude, so leveraging their distribution in that way when it's foreign, and I'm not going to go into these countries. And the amount of effort that would go into one country, getting it in every bookstore, train station, and airport, which in the UK, it's in every train station and bookstore and airport in Netherlands and Ireland. And I don't even know all the countries in the UK, right? So that's it, man. It's really about foreign distribution. It's also, it's extra money. That's just icing, like I said, on the cake. But it really is about the impact and being able to. And when I went out to France, we did this. You saw the French media tour we did, and it was crazy. We did this book signing and having dozens and dozens of French people that speak English, but they're like, "Oh, your book." I don't do accents very well, but they're like, it's changed my. This one guy, he's a CEO of a company in Paris, and he's like, Miracle Morning changed my life, and I taught it. All my employees do it. We so that's crazy to think people around the world that I would never see, meet, reach, etc. They're now being impacted by the message. So yeah,
love it. Now, one of the last things I want to chat about is exactly that book tour. Tell us kind of how that came about, what that book tour was like, and what kind of results you saw, both for you, for your business, and for book sales from doing that book tour in France.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of teaching of how it came about. It came about because my French publisher said, hey, we would like to fly you out to France and do a media tour, like we did with what's the woman's name that wrote the life-changing magic of tidying up?
Oh gosh, I know the book, but I can't remember her name right now.
So I don't know. Anyway, she wrote it's like, millions of copies sold. Chandler's gonna look it up. But Maria, something like that. All right. So they said we did this for her last year, when we published her book in France, and it really helped drive sales in a major way. And I came back. Actually, this is kind of a fun story. I'll tell. This is fun. So I came back and I was like, hey, is there any way you'd fly my wife out there? Like, we've never been to Paris. I can't go to Paris without my wife. And they're like, sure. And then I got booked to speak in the Philippines like a week apart. And I was like, somebody told me, they go, have you ever traveled internationally like that? I said, no. They go, dude, you're going to be a wreck going to Paris, coming off the Philippines. Like, you're going to be a mess. And I was like, really? They go, dude, if I were you, I would find a way to fly first class so you could sleep in like a lay down bed to Paris at the very least. So I go back to the publisher. I'm like, hey, any way you would fly me and my wife first class to Paris? And I looked up the flights. It was $9,000 each. It was $18,000. And they had to get it approved by all these people. And they came back and they were like, done. Like, what? So we fly out to Paris, and then it was the same treatment that like Leonardo DiCaprio gets when he comes out with a new movie. Like the same, I had 5 dedicated media people like putting makeup on me every day and driving me to radio station and television station. And like, I was doing photo shoots. I had to like model. It was so awkward. They're over there, but I have some Paris magazines they've sent me that I'm in. But anyway, and then here's what happened though. Day one, they had been promoting the book already. It had come out like 2 weeks prior, and they had been doing their own publicity. when I got to Paris, it was number 155 on all of Amazon.fr, or whatever. By the end of media day 1, it climbed to number 68. By the end of day 2, it climbed to number 22 on all of Amazon in Paris or in France. And then by the end of day 3, it was the 5th best-selling book in all of France from the media tour. So yeah, so it was a pretty surreal experience.
That's awesome. So you guys obviously saw a big drive in book sales in the French market from that tour.
Absolutely. And I will say that in America, I've tried doing television and it did not net me major. It wasn't a needle mover for book sales. And so anybody watching, what I found the best marketing for your books is podcast interviews. Number one, it's free for you. It doesn't cost you any money, right? You have to take the time. So it does cost you time, but it doesn't cost any money. But that has moved the needle more than anything else. And the one thing I didn't leverage is bloggers, having either guest blogging or having bloggers write about your book, review your book. I would imagine that probably net similar results. And here's why. If you're sitting at home watching television, number one, the majority of those people aren't book buyers, right? That's true. Number two, they may or may not be, in the process of like wanting to shop right then on Amazon. But if they're listening to a podcast, those are the type of people that seek out personal development or business advice or whatever the podcast that you're on that's related to your content. That's where they are. So those are book buyers. Now, that's why my theory is with bloggers, right? Same thing. If you're reading a blog and it's your content and that you like and that helps you, and there's a link to a book, it can't get easier than clicking the link, right? So I'd imagine that would be good. I don't know if you have any thoughts on, guest blogging or getting featured on blogs, but podcasts for me has been huge. And that's why I've done 230 plus and I still do them every week.
It's a great tip. And especially because podcasting, it's so much easier than say writing a post, especially for guys like you and I, where it's like you speak easier than you write. It's like, cool. I can just pop up. There's not much prep necessary. Ask me the questions, I'll answer them, and there we go. As opposed to the ton of preparation and original content, which are things that you could be using for your own stuff, whether it be a book or your own blog or anything like that. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. But final question is, what would be your parting tip or piece of advice for someone thinking about writing and publishing their first book? And especially those people who might be thinking, hey, I want to make this book into a movement or into something that's really changing people's lives, like what Hal's doing. Yeah.
It's easier done than said, or easier said than done, right? It's like there isn't a surefire way. I didn't like what happened with what's happened the Miracle Morning and continues to happen. I part of me thought something big could happen of it, but I didn't really. It's not like I was like, yep, this is it. I'm not like the NBA player that's like, I knew since I was 3 years old that I was going to play in the NBA. Like, I have no idea. I just keep moving forward. But I think that, you obviously you've got to solve a problem, right? You've got to solve a problem or create a solution for people. So like Chandler, you're creating a movement with self-publishing school, right? You've solved a huge problem, which is I want to write a book. I don't know where to start, right? Or people they don't even think, they think, oh, you have to get a traditional publisher to, affirm and sign you. And I who am I to do that, right? So Chandler, you're solving this huge problem. Great example, right? You've done that with all of your books. You've got to solve a problem. And now if you want it to become a movement, a couple things. Number one is obviously the behavior change, right? Create a ritual around your content. And like morning pages, that does create a movement. So, I don't need to give you guys extra tips. I just want to reinforce what really matters. And that is the behavior change. And the other aspect though, and I didn't mention this yet, so I'm glad I thought of it, is, and you mentioned it, but we didn't really talk about it, is embed paying it forward into your book. So if you read The Miracle Morning, early on, I talk about one of the causes of mediocrity. I talk about all the causes of mediocrity, and then, of course, the book that I wrote for them solves them, right? One of the causes, I say, is a lack of accountability. And I talk about how when we're children, accountability is forced upon us by adults in our lives, our parents, our teachers, right? They make us eat our vegetables, which we don't want to do that. We fight it. We don't want to know, right? They make us take baths. They make us do our homework. And if it wasn't for our parents, we'd be malnutrition, dirty, sleep deprived, uneducated kids, right? But we didn't know. We were too immature to understand the value. You know, they tried to tell us, right? This is for your own good, son. And you're like, screw you, Dad. I don't want to do it, right? So here's the deal. I go in depth on the value of accountability and how, hey, if you want your life to go to another level, you've got to realize that accountability is the only reason that any great results have happened in your life up until this point, right? And that when you turned 18, you left the house probably, and your life, you know, most people, their life's a downward spiral because they have no accountability, right? They defy it, and they don't realize I need to embrace it and invite it back in my life. So I want to give you guys a little context so you understand, right? So when I do that, people go, oh, wow, I never thought of accountability that way. I guess I need accountability. And then I say, for example, the best place to start is right now. Get an accountability partner to help you implement the Miracle Morning. And then I make it easy. The last thing I'll share is I make it easy. I give them a website where they can share. I go, look, if you want to get a copy of the book for your friend, of course, as the author, I thank you in advance. But you don't need to do that. Send them to miraclemorning.com. Have them enter their name and email address. And then I give them 3 different learning options for 3 different learning modalities. I say they'll get the first 3 chapters of the book for free. They'll also get a 17-minute video of me giving a speech on the Miracle Morning for free. And if they go to miraclemorning.com and enter their name and email, they'll also get a 60-minute training audio so they can learn it however they want. By the end of, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, they're going to call you back and go, wow, I need to do this with you. So now, right? So I mentioned that early. I also tell a story about how someone that shared something with me once, on and on. So I really drive home the point of sharing what's helping you with others and the value of that, and also getting an accountability partner. And then I make it easy. I tell them exactly how to get an accountability partner. And that's the last thing I'll say, Chandler, is you have to make it so easy for your readers to implement your content, or they never will. You got to make it easy for them to finish reading your book by making every chapter at the end make you want to keep reading, right? It's got to be fun, entertaining, like watching a movie. If all the movie did was educate you but didn't entertain you, you would never watch it. So make your book enjoyable to read, and then make your content easy to implement and set your readers up for success. They'll start doing what you taught them. They'll live differently. Their life will improve. They'll tell everyone they know, and you will create a movement from your book.
Love it. Love it. Very inspiring, Hal. This has been a fantastic interview, and you've just been dropping tons of knowledge like always. Before we leave, where can people go to find out more about you, your book, and what you're up to?
Miraclemorning.com is probably the best place. If you want to come to our live events, we've got bestyeareverlive.com, and then there's an event tab on the Miracle Morning website as well. But that's the best place. I've got my name, halelrod.com. If you want to spend all day surfing the net and looking me up, you can do that. But miraclemorning.com is probably the best. That's our new site. I'm pretty pumped on it, and best place to go.
Awesome. Hal, thank you so much, brother. Always a pleasure. Really enjoyed this interview.
Awesome. Appreciate you, buddy.